right. Well, good afternoon, good morning, wherever everyone's listening in. I am Dr. Lauren, and I am so excited to have Terrie Noland here to talk about Learning Ally and her journey with literacy. Terrie, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. Yes. So let's hop into our questions. So for the audience who is not familiar with you and Learning Ally, I would love if you could share a little bit about your journey to Learning Ally, how you became vice president, what Learning Ally is. Share with our audience.
Yeah. So my journey actually began a long time ago. My husband was in the Air Force, and so we were moving around all over the place. And, I would be working, find a job where we were. And I was finishing up my master's program. When we were living in Nebraska, and finishing up a master's program. My bachelor's degree, my master's degree are both in criminal justice.
Wow.
I know, wait, I don't understand that. Criminal justice and where you are today. And while I was doing that, of course, he was gone all the time. And I'm here raising our 3 children. So I started teaching preschool and was teaching those 5-year-old kids. I didn't have a clue about literacy. I mean, sure, we read books, we used oral language and play and things like that, but I did not know anything about how to prepare these 5-year-old minds where they would be in kindergarten, And then I eventually became the director of that preschool. So in that, administrator role. But still, I mean, I truly thought that this criminal justice route would be my direction and my passion. So my husband got orders. We're from Texas, and he got orders back to Texas at that time. And it was actually my sister-in-law that called me up and said, we are looking to hire someone out in the area that you're moving to, out in Texas. And, I knew she had been working for this organization called RFB&D, Recording for the Blind and Dyslexic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I needed a job.
Right, of course.
I needed a job. So I applied, and it just worked out perfectly because it was a work from home job. And that was 15 years ago.
Wow.
When work from home, that's crazy. And the reason my sister-in-law worked at this organization is because my nephew is blind.
Okay.
So, yeah. He was born at 27 weeks, contracted meningitis, which caused and blindness.
Right.
So she had found this organization. She started working for them. And anyway, I got the job, right? And, here I am out in the middle of West Texas, running around to schools saying, you got to get these cassette tapes, these audiobooks play them on this big machine. Your kids are going to love it. And you know what? It only takes 2 weeks for these cassettes.
Yeah.
I know, like, whoa. So anyway, let's fast forward a little bit. And, this really started my journey because audiobooks, while it is so obvious what it does to help someone with a visual impairment, and, thinking about students that have those struggles with reading, that have those learning disabilities, that have dyslexia, that aren't so obviously seen.
Right.
Yeah. And so I'm a person of curiosity, and I'm like, why does this work? I started questioning, why audiobooks? Why does this work for kids? And I would go to conferences, and I was itching to get into the conference session instead of standing behind a booth.
Right.
Yeah. So, I got certified as an academic language practitioner in an Orton Gillingham method of structured literacy program. And I'm going to tell you what, my mind was blown.
Yeah.
You know it.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then I started moving up in the organization. I started out in my little territory in West Texas, But that passion, that curiosity, me wanting to improve myself, I started moving up in the organization and now serve as vice president of educator initiatives at our national nonprofit. And I mean, my goal, my daily mission is pretty simple, and that is to be a spark of encouragement to somebody else, to light somebody else on fire. And I do that. I try to do that daily with our professional learning services, with the community that we are developing, with equipping educators, administrators, and educators to become literacy leaders. And in order to do that, I thought, you know what, I want to make sure I know about, because all of my undergrad, my master's work was criminal justice.
Right.
I went back to school and I got my PhD in literacy.
That's awesome. So, I have to tell you, Terrie, I've seen a lot of your, you've done EdWebs with Learning Ally that I've seen before we were friendly with each other. And I could always feel your passion whenever you speak. And just, I really thought, like, what is her connection to, literacy and dyslexia and all of that. So I really love your passion. I love hearing your journey, because I think a lot of folks don't realize sometimes people don't start off as an elementary school teacher, or don't start off as that reading specialist. So I'm curious, is there anyone in your family who's dyslexic at all?
There's not. And
okay.
There's not. And that's usually why so many people really dive deep in this field.
Right.
They've got that personal connection. I would say that what got me in the organization was my nephew.
Okay.
With his blindness. But it was when I got here that, and I'm one of these people, dog with a bone, I guess. Give me something that I believe in, and you're not going to get me.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I understand on a grander scale that as an education system, when we do not give our students the best foundation and groundwork, what that's doing to our society.
Right.
And let me tell you what, it's almost kind of cool that I started in the criminal justice world, because I was so curious about the research that says so many individuals sitting in our prison systems commonly shared characteristic of dyslexia.
Right.
Yeah. So it's that passion, it's that drive. I heard a great quote from, his name's Dr. Paul Sheely, and he said, our lives should be a landing strip for the emerging future.
Wow, that's deep.
It grabbed me. And he also talked about the fact that as parents, as adults, as educators, we should never de-genius a child. Yeah. So
wow.
I'm a big believer in human potential. I'm a big believer. And the more that I grew to know about dyslexia, the more I grew to understand literacy at a grand scale and underserved populations of students.
Right.
And you got me rolling here, Lauren, and you're not going to get me away from it.
No, and I love it. I really do. And I think, Terrie, we have a lot in common with that passion, because a lot of people, they see what I'm doing out here with Think Dyslexia Network and then Think Dyslexia, and they assume that I'm either dyslexic or I have a family member or kids that are dyslexic. And, I usually start off the interview, which I didn't today, by saying I am not an adult with dyslexia. I just happened to start my career at a private dyslexic school in Atlanta, Georgia. And this actually leads me into my next question. But, when I was working on my master's, it was an elementary master's degree, and then it was special education. And I remember we took a reading course, but I don't really remember hearing about what dyslexia was. And so when I started my career at this school, being naive and starting off as a teacher, I thought a lot of teachers knew what Orton Gillingham was, and a lot of teachers understood what structured literacy was. And obviously, once I left the private school world and stepped foot into public school, I realized that that was not the case. So, this is my passion because, like you said, I mean, literacy, first of all, literacy is the key to success in so many aspects. I mean, it just opens up your world. I mean, what is it, in 4th or 5th grade, you start reading to learn. So you definitely need those foundational skills. So I know that did you graduate with your doctorate yet? Or
I did.
Yay, Terrie, that's so exciting. Congratulations, Dr. Noland. That is awesome. I love it. So
you know the feeling, so you know what it's all about. Yeah,
absolutely. Once that dissertation is done and then you're ready to walk across the stage, you're like, I am finished. Yes, that is a triumph. So in your university classes, because we know as a literacy community, there's so many teachers that are frustrated. Either they're brand new in the field or they've been in the field for 10 plus years, like myself, and they're like, wait a second, we weren't taught this in our teacher prep programs. Now, I know your PhDs in literacy. So what were the discussions looking like? Are you guys talking about dyslexia now? Are they trying to mandate courses to show the research to support that teachers need to understand what these early indicators are? I'm really curious.
Oh, and let me tell you a little bit about my dissertation. And honestly, going through my program, it took me 3 years to get through the program, St. John's University out of New York.
Yes.
And it was all virtual. I mean,
Okay.
That's why I chose that program, because it was virtual, and going through the whole program. I work at Learning Ally. We're all about audiobooks, and I truly believe my dissertation would be something about audiobooks. But as you dig in, as you start reading and looking at articles and research and all of these things, and I really had this, moment, this epiphany that said, let me reflect on my journey in education from that preschool teacher that didn't have a clue to now I came up, I went through how many hours of practicum hours and in-class hours to get certified as an academic language practitioner. Now I know how to identify someone with dyslexia, how to intervene. I know what to do. So I reflected on that journey and thought, you know what? My dissertation needs to be about that, because I can't believe I'm alone.
Right.
You just said it. It was the same. You believed everybody knew. I did a mixed methods research study where I had the qualitative portion was I interviewed experienced educators.
Okay.
So educators that have been in the field a really long time, and asked about their journey, their experiences. And it was really looking around this notion of teacher guilt.
Interesting.
Yeah, not guilt, I just committed a crime guilt.
Right.
But these feelings like, I didn't know, I feel like I didn't serve my students, or I'm in a school and they are mandating something that I know better.
Right.
I know what you're mandating doesn't work. The science says it doesn't work. So I interviewed those folks. And then the quantitative portion, I did a survey for new teachers K-2.
Okay.
That completed the survey about self-efficacy and their knowledge of foundational skills and literacy. And 3 years or fewer in their experience. So newbies in the classroom.
Yes.
Here's what I found.
Yeah, what are the findings? Let's go to the last page. Yeah.
The results say that our new teachers coming out of their pre-service programs, they scored high in self-efficacy, the belief in themselves that they could actually go teach reading. Yeah, I know everything there is to know. I'm confident. Oh, and we need people with confidence. Absolutely. Yes. But on their knowledge to teach reading, and I use Louisa Moat's teacher knowledge assessment. what's a digraph, how many syllables, what's a phoneme, all of these things. They scored so low.
Wow.
It was high, but their knowledge about
Was low.
Yeah, because our pre-service programs aren't teaching them.
Right. So it hasn't changed, Terrie, is what you're telling me.
It hasn't changed. Okay, results of the interviews.
Yes.
The interviews. These teachers and I interviewed 8 people. The 7 of them had feelings of either depressive guilt, like
Wow.
I feel like I did something wrong for my kids, or persecutory guilt, which is that pressure from being told what to do. They said, why didn't somebody teach
me? Yes, yes, yes.
Why didn't somebody give me the right way? Because now I know the right way, but I had to go discover it for myself. Okay, there was one person who didn't have any feelings like that. But what was different about her? She came up the way you came up, Lauren.
Okay.
So no, she didn't have feelings of guilt because she was prepared the right way.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would love, so how long is your dissertation?
165 pages.
Oh, that's not too bad. Mine,
I think, too bad.
Yeah, I think mine was like about 110-ish, and I think my husband's was like 400.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, his was way too long. So I would actually love to read your dissertation, because I just like, this is so fascinating to me. And you specifically got your PhD in literacy. And I just feel like these are things that obviously this is why you do what you do, and I do what I do. And we need to talk about this. So I'm so glad you delved into the results and findings of your study, because I think that those are things, the big takeaways that, many folks out there aren't going to get their doctorate like us, but they want to know those findings. So that is 2021, and it's still happening.
It's still happening. And oh my goodness. And even looking at the research, the National Center for Teacher Quality has a list that shows what type of instruction is being taught on a grand scale across the country, what books are being used. And it's still this, very whole language. Now, listen, I believe there is a place for whole language, but it's not teaching our pre-K to 2-year-old, to 2nd grade. That's not the place for it. We need structured literacy there. We need structured literacy and pull out an intervention. But if we are trying to work on comprehension, cognitive processing, all of this, because I already know how to decode words.
Right.
Then these approaches are, our groups, our guided studies, awesome. That works there. But it does not work for our students that need those foundations.
Right. No, I 100% agree. And I think it's, we know what works. And I think if it's the teachers that are like, no, they'll just get it. And I really think, I wasn't a struggling reader, but I really, truly, I'm like, how did I learn how to read? I mean, I just even think back to my student teaching. I mean, I put out a post on Instagram a few days ago, like, you don't know what you don't know. And I just remember I had 2 examples I talked about. One was, watching my host teacher do her reading groups. So the kids would open up their books and they would all be on page 2, and she would read, and Popcorn read, and Jimmy would read, and then Sarah would read. And it was just this beautiful choral progression of reading. And so what did the dog do? And then this kid's raising their hand, and I'm like, there has to be a struggling reader here. And then fast forward to the same school. Actually, these are 2 different schools I'm thinking about. The other school I did my student teaching was in rural New York. And this student was seeing a reading specialist. And I remember asking the host teacher, can you tell me a little bit about the student? And so apparently the student had been homeschooled until 4th grade, but did not know his alphabet. And for me as a grad student, I was 22 years old. And obviously I wasn't Orton Gillingham trained or anything. And I just said, how does he not know his alphabet? I was so mind blown, right? And then I asked the $1 million question. Well, how are you going to teach him how to read? And I don't really remember what she said. I just remember thinking to myself, like, how do you do that? And so obviously 2 years later, I learned. Now I would know how to go back and help that student, rather than let's just give him an hour a week of intervention, put him back in that code. I don't even think they called them code groups. I think they were just like reading comprehension groups. He wouldn't comprehend anything. He doesn't know his alphabet. So it's just fascinating to hear. And I went to Syracuse, and Syracuse is a great school, but we didn't talk about dyslexia, and we didn't talk about, and it was a special ed program. My second master's was special ed. So I remember specifically taking a class on autism, because I think that maybe they were, with their research, cutting edge with the research with that, but definitely not literacy. So I know we could talk about this forever, Terrie.
Talk about this forever. Oh my.
But let's close out with our last question. So I really want you to share with our audience, what are 3 major things that you could share about Learning Ally? If anyone wants to know about it, if they want to know how to use it, what are some things that you could share with our audience?
Yeah, Learning Ally, we're a national nonprofit. I mean, and let me tell you what, we serve with our hearts first. We truly do. It's about educators, it's about students. And that's what, we're here to smash the literacy divide that's happening in our country. We've quoted those NAEP scores left and right. 65% of our students are not meeting levels of proficiency in reading.
Right.
But let's take out students, our white students and our Asian students, and look at the number of our students of color, and that number is to 81%. We are a nation at risk because we know that literacy is a social justice issue.
Yes.
As an organization, and we've been around for over 70 years.
Wow. I don't think I knew that.
I know. The founder, actually, she wanted to serve individuals that were coming back from World War II who had been blinded in war. We started as a blindness organization. Yeah, Ann McDonald and her group of women at the Women's Auxiliary Group in New York City recorded books at the top of the New York City Public Library for GIs. So
that's amazing.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, just servant hearts, I'm telling you. So here we are, fast forward into 2021. We, 3 things. We still have our flagship solution, which is our audiobook.
Right.
And here's the differentiator that I really want people to understand. The human voice carries so much meaning. You're able to have tone, inflection, that prosody that we know is so important in oral reading. You could hear the voice of somebody that you know and love walk into a room, and you know it. You're connected. We make sure that all of our books are recorded with human voice.
That's excellent.
But here's the good part, is we want to make sure that there's authenticity in voice. I'm a Texas girl. My Texas accent comes out a lot. You think me reading the Diary of Anne Frank? No.
Right. Okay. I see where this is going. Yes.
Yeah. Narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. That needs to be in the voice and the tone.
Yes.
Man, yeah. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, we make sure that we are pairing the voice with the book. So like I said, that's our flagship. That's where we started our roots. But we know as an organization, we can't proceed in the future with just one flagship thing. So 2 other things that we've got going. We got quite a bit going, but I'll mention. We are partnering with research institutions around the country.
Yes.
California, San Francisco, their Dyslexia Research Center, Harvard, MIT. We have leading neuroscientists that we're partnering with to understand how the brain works when it comes to reading, when it comes to literacy. But we don't stop there. Then we're figuring out, how do we bring in that, if this is what the child is showing through a diagnostic, what do the teachers need to be doing to address those?
Right.
So really linking it to practice in the classroom, developing a whole child literacy system where we are providing solutions to address things like, trauma. What about kids coming to our classrooms with trauma? What about It's coming from those low socioeconomic classrooms. What about our students with dyslexia? What do they need? And then the final thing is our professional learning in our community. Our professional learning services, our community. I mean, we're building literacy leaders, and
Yes.
we're through connection and programs and all kinds of wonderful things.
That's great. Thank you, Terrie, for sharing that. I hope all of you listening really took away a lot from this conversation. And obviously, Terrie and I could talk about this for a very long time, but I really want to thank you, Dr. Terrie Noland, and congratulations for joining me this afternoon to have this little small quick discussion, but it was a meaningful one. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. So happy to be here. And I'm telling you, the work that you're doing with, I think, dyslexia, keep at it, because you're making a difference.
Thank you so much. And you too, a learning ally, 70 years. Wow. All right. Well, have a good afternoon, Terrie.
All right. Thanks so much.